So let me just tell you a small piece about me. I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on my story, but my story will interweave with yours as we go through this. Like all of you, I was never supposed to be a cancer patient. That wasn't ever on my calendar. And I was a graduate student doing life. And so I had the pleasure of getting diagnosed between classes because, like you, that wasn't part of the plan. And I was pretty young. It was 26 years ago, and so they weren't really expecting that I was a stage 4 ovarian cancer patient. And neither was I, actually. And so part of what I want to talk about is what happens to us when this experience happens, because we have a life that's a great life and we have ideas of where we're going, and it gets interrupted. And it's an experience that we have to take in and keep working with. Because as you all know, once you're a cancer patient, you're always a cancer patient. You don't ever get to be an uncancer patient or a former cancer patient. It's just part of what we're doing. So I'm going to keep coming back here periodically to make sure that I say some things that I think will be helpful. I have a couple of goals for us tonight. My first goal is to affirm your experience. In my practice, when people come to me, very, very often some of the first things they say to me is, I don't feel normal. Am I crazy? Here's what I'm thinking about. And I want to for sure let you know that you're not crazy. Either we're all crazy or none of us are crazy. And I want to give you some coping strategies. And I'm going to name a whole bunch of different things tonight that I've tried, other people that I work with have tried. And what I hope is that one or two of them might work for you. Because no strategy works for everybody, and no strategy works all the time. So, before I get started, what I'm wondering if people could raise hands and just give me some idea if anybody here's newly diagnosed, recently diagnosed. If anybody's in the middle of treatment still going through treatment. People that are ongoing treatment, that they're being told, okay. And then anybody NED? I love NED. I got to tell you, they never had NED. So I came up, when I went through this, they didn't have the phrase NED.
What's NED?
No evidence of disease. And so I always refer to myself as an inactive cancer patient. Partly kind of like NED is to get people to stop, because as you well know, once you stop treatment, everybody thinks you're great, it's all good now. Supporters. Yay, it's good to have you. So I want to talk about the emotional challenges. That's what Chris and I talked about would be helpful, because we have our medical team that's helping us with the physical challenges, all of those things. I think about when we first get diagnosed, it's like we're on this roller coaster ride. Because, you know, that slow climb up, I don't like roller coasters, but you go this slow climb up and then all of a sudden it's just, and you don't know which way you're going. And that's what it feels like. You know, which test is going to take you, right? And I always feel like I'm one blood test away from being active again, right? And another image I have of what this experience is like is that we're trucking along in life. We're just walking along, and then all of a sudden we get diagnosed, and what happens is we touch our death. It's like we get just right next to our own death, and then we gradually peel ourselves off, and we come back to life, and life looks really different now. Because to have seen death, glimpsed at death, it's a whole new experience now, and that partly separates us from other people that haven't looked at their own death. And I don't know if you've ever been to the Saints game, but sometimes they have this person put on a Velcro suit and they jump up on the wall and they're stuck. And that's kind of like death. And then you gotta slowly peel yourself off. And then it's just like, okay, now how do I do this? Because it's different. And I can't say this to everybody, because if I say that, I've had people stop me and say, you can't use the D word. You know, I'm using the C word and the D word tonight because we're all thinking about it, right? Hi. Glad you're here. So, this is an emotional experience. I have this image in my head of, okay, some of you will know this, Pink Floyd, Dark Side of the Moon. Okay, so there's the white beam that goes through the prism, and then the rainbow with the black backdrop. Okay, so a true rainbow has every color in it. This is an experience that if every color represents an emotion, you will touch them all. You will have a complete and total rainbow. You will have the white light experience, which is the perfect light balance, and you will have the dark backdrop, which is the heavy aspect of all of them, and you will have every color band. And so I want you to know it's a full experience. I have people that come to me and they say, Brenda, it's just like this and like this emotionally, and I want it to just be smooth and predictable and calm. And what I explain to them is there is a time and place where this happens. This is called your casket. Little soft pillow, satin, or you go in silk. But this is life, all right? And that when we're having emotional experiences, that are part of what we want to do to help ourselves heal and stay present and keep moving is to allow ourselves to have them. How are we doing? Yeah? Oh, I got to go over here. I got to show you something. Oh, he's following me. So when this happened to me, I tried to figure out what was this experience? What happened? And so I created these images that I refer to as my pies of life, trying to figure out what happened to all of us. And for those of you supporters, this happened to you too, because life changed. So here's where we start. You know those things when you go to conferences and people do this? I'm forgetting. What is that called? Somebody remember? What is it called? Yeah, but what is, yeah, PowerPoint. Somebody knew. PowerPoint. Okay. That was, you just saw chemo brain happening. Okay. I want you to know I can do this, but it's so much more fun to play with a felt board. So, let's say this was my life before I was diagnosed, okay? So see this brown? This is 2 PhD programs that I was in, okay? And I had, come on out, life. This one, this is where I thought I was going. This is my future hopes and dreams, right? Notice the direction. Notice this color is absent, okay? I was hoping to get out of graduate school. What happened next was this. Now, I would really put that about 3 feet in the ground. When they said, I'm going to try not to cry, that I had stage 4 ovarian cancer. And so I would tell you that the gray represented the American Cancer Society, right? Saying, here's our plan, because we got a plan for you, right? Because I didn't have a plan for it. I was working on 2 dissertations. I would tell you that the black was depression, because I was trying to figure out, how do I do this? And what used to be a whole life was scrunched down here, right? And then, after a while, after that initial shock, I kind of got into the rhythm of treatment, into life. And I'll tell you, this is where I am today. Okay? Having some hopes and dreams again. Please note the gray doesn't ever go away. This is a part of my life now. And partly why I picked pie shape, think French silk. But that, you can, if it's French silk, I might really want a big slice, but because it's so rich, I'm going to have a smaller slice. If I am waiting for blood tests, that CA125 that we have such a mixed relationship with, my slice gets bigger. That slice gets bigger, and it takes over more of my life, and then it comes down. I want you to know I still worry about that 26 years later. Because we all know why, right? So this is what we're talking about. This is the roller coaster ride. When we get here to inactive cancer patient, NED, right? When we've completed treatment, people said to me, oh, just go back here and pick up where you were, right? We've all heard that. Just go back here and act like, what? Nothing happened, right? So one of the pieces I want to talk about tonight is that terrified me, because if I went back here, I know where it took me. As a cancer patient, I'd call that recurrence, right? And so it's like, no, I need to keep moving. I need to move, and I need to create some new hopes and dreams, right? Here's a critical piece. We need to grieve this life, because it was a fabulous life. Nobody had a bad life. I didn't say perfect, did I? And I didn't say easy. But it was a good life. And we were working, and we had places we wanted to go. And where I see when I'm working with people, they're able to acknowledge this. And they forget to acknowledge where they thought they were going. Because this is a grief point too. And until we can grieve and acknowledge the loss of these two aspects, we can't create new hopes and dreams. Because we're pulling back here and saying, if only I was here, I could. And notice that a lot of the colors are there. They're just a little bit different. Because now I have insight from going through this part of my life. So it gives me courage to keep moving. Thoughts? Questions? Answers? I want to give just a kind of a simple way of thinking about depression and anxiety. So if we say this hand's anxiety and we say this hand's depression, sadness sits over here, fear sits over here, right? Depression, generally speaking, is about my past. If only maybe if I had not eaten so many hot dogs, cancer. All right, these are the trying to figure out. Anxiety is about what's going to happen in the future. So partly why I want you to think about these things is that when you have a feeling and you want to work with it, I want you to know where it's coming from. Because it helps us come up with a plan of what do I do to help manage and work with the feeling. Because it's real. Feelings are. What we do with them is what can get us in trouble. It could be good or not so good, how we handle our feelings, okay? So if depression's about past, that's where we get some regrets, if onlys. This is where we need to forgive ourselves and say, given whatever was going on back there, the choices I made, I did the best that I thought I could, right? And we have to forgive ourselves for being in our 20s. Every one of us does. That 20s are to live through. Those are like, wow. And the future is to be able to rest on where we've been, come back to today and know that our past gives us the courage and the guidance and information to keep us going. How are we doing? Is that outrageous? Too simple? Too hard? Here's another way I want you to think about it. Let me talk about anxiety. If I'm emotionally balanced, right, and I'm kind of trucking along and days are good, and all of a sudden I get anxiety, and it's like, what about this next test? What is this scan going to happen? What is this, right? And we hear somebody else's story, and then we go, well, what about me? And now I'm out of balance, right? So I need to do something to bring myself back into balance. So remembering that anxiety is about the future, anxiety is a call to action. It says, do something, do something, do something, do something. And so part of the do something is to help me say, here I am today. If I'm 30, if I'm 50, if I'm 80, every day that I have lived has taught me how to live today, and it will help me get to that future. And so it can help me calm myself down because I can rest on my past. Okay? Because this action is, bring me back to balance. Bring me back to right here, right now, and to actually explore what is the fear. Well, what will happen if I test results different? Well, if I have a test result that's off, we'll make a plan. One of the gifts of being further out than when somebody's a brand new diagnosis, we remember this, the Velcro, right? Is that we all thought we were going to die right away. Remember? You're diagnosed and you think you're going to be dead tomorrow. And then you wake up and you're not dead. And then you wake up again and you're not dead. And then all of a sudden it's been a year, it's been 2 years, and you're chugging along, and then you realize if something happens, it's like, we'll work with this. And I'm not minimizing dying. Not for a second. It's just that it doesn't happen that fast, which is good news and bad news. Okay? I mean, nothing has just one side. But it's like, what's my action to bring myself back into balance? Yeah.
You know, what you're saying is logical.
Yes.
It makes sense. But, you know, the fear part of that anxiety is so powerful that it kind of clouds that logic.
So you're absolutely right. So that's part of my listening to it. Because tell me, I appreciate you're talking about fear and how it's just, I'm repeating what you said. How when we have fear of the future of something happening, it clouds that logic. So we really have kind of like two brains. We got the emotional mind, the emotion brain, and then we have the logic. And it kind of is an evil either or, right? That's what we're talking about. And so it's like, how do I bring this back here? And so, because I think you're going to go see the Vikings in a few minutes, I'm going to just jump ahead. This is like, just think positive. How many of you have been told that? Just think positive. You know, you're racing, we've got that, right? And everybody, you know, that's, you know, but just think positive. Well, first of all, they don't know what they're saying to us because you just kind of want to pop them, right? Because, it's like, just think positive. I mean, this isn't fun. I'm not trying to do this, okay? So here's how, if this is the positive and this is the negative thinking or the fear talking, because what if and what if and what if? And the longer we're in this situation, the more stories we get to know and we watch, right? Okay, so if this is positive and this is negative, that's an either or. Here's how I walk with that. Let's on this side have hopes. Hopes that something good can come from this experience, right? Lots of good things. We've met really good people here. I came in and you were all talking to each other. And it's only because of our diagnoses that we know each other. We wouldn't have known each other, and that's cool. I mean, I'm sorry about the diagnosis, but I'm glad that you know each other. Okay, so that's that there's something good. There's some good things that can come. And over here I have some doubts and fears, right? That nothing good can come from this, and that if the worst thing is that I can die, right? Okay, so I want to put this on a continuum. So I can slide back and forth, and I have hopes and I have doubts. And so if I'm here and I have doubts, I need to find one of you that can be holding hopes. And you have hopes. I'm going to say, hold on to that thread of hope and come listen to me talk about my fears. Because as I talk about my fears of the future and what about this and what about that, and you just sit there and you hold me emotionally, you can hug me too. What happens is they start to unpeel. because it's about the future. And if I'm not trying to argue with you about them, and I'm sitting there going, yeah, okay, and what else? And what else? What happens is you start to unpeel them, and you end up in the middle, because here I am right now. That is not happening now. I can start to breathe again, because I was able to tell you, and you listen to me. If you're over here just telling me, just be positive, this gets bigger and bigger and bigger, because this is real. You are absolutely right. And until I get to look at this, I'm not going to be able to put it aside. Okay? How'd I do?
Good.
Thank you. That's a critical piece. You just jumped a couple pages ahead, but that's all right. Part of this is that shock of the diagnosis separates us out, and people don't understand us. I want to give you an example that's similar to this. Are any of you parents in here? Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about before you had the first baby, and you thought and had plans how you were going to parent. I hear this with young moms to be. They're going to be organic, and they're going to make everything from scratch, and how it's all going to be, right? So, and here's the baby, right? Here they're talking, they got all these plans, and then they have their baby, and what we all know what happens is like it's, you know, that's craziness. It's not going to be like that. Excuse me, that's not going to be like that, because you can't know until after you cross the path. You can't, you and I could tell them, oh, you know, it's not going to go like that. Just put all that organic grinders away, okay? But they're going to buy them anyway. So, and then they'll never use them. Because we all know it's really different once you're there, and you can't explain it or know it before you cross the boundary. This is also true with cancer. We cannot explain to people what it's like after you've crossed that line. Because what's the same about both of those experiences is once you cross it, you can't go back. You cannot unknow what you know about being a parent. Remember before your kids came, the first one, you thought you were so busy. And then you had a kid and you're like, what did I do with all my time? It's the same thing. It's just a total perspective shift, and you cannot share that with somebody. That's why this community is so important, is to be able to talk to people that have a similar experience. Is that I can say things, you nod your head, and in your head you have things to add, which you could if you would like to. Because we can have a conversation that builds on each other. Whereas if I talk to somebody, and this is true for caregivers, true, because you've been in us for as long as we have, that if I try to explain this to somebody who hasn't had a life-threatening illness, I am going back explaining things to them. It's not a building conversation. It's not a bad conversation. It's a different conversation than I have with you, right? So I want to decrease the stress of when you say, but they don't get it. Like at work, do they get it? No. And the longer that you're a cancer patient, the farther that goes, because they forget about it. In my family, on one side, I'm one of 36 cousins. Big family. I was the first one diagnosed. Because you know, out of 36 cousins, other have been diagnosed, right? So I was at a funeral for one of my cousins. And I walked up to a group of cousins talking, and they were talking about people having cancer kind of in a way that we would rather not hear people talk about. And I'm standing there and they turn to me and they're talking to me, and I'm thinking, how can you forget? How can you forget that? And it's like, why would they remember? It's a humbling fact, is why would they remember or care to remember about my life experience? They're busy in their own life, so I want to give them much grace in that regard. Here's a catch-up thing that happens. These two bracelets that I wear come from this dear woman named Shelley. She was my first clinical advisor. when I was in grad school when I got diagnosed, and so I was doing a clinical internship, and then the next year I did cancer instead, right? And so Shelley by that time had moved to Madison, Wisconsin, and she was fabulous. She was absolutely fabulous. Every time she was in town, she'd come track me down. I was in the hospital a lot. My treatment was very different than yours. She'd come track me down, you know. I thought she was fabulous. One day, Shelley calls and she goes, "Hey, Brenda, I need to apologize to you." I'm like, "What about?" She said, "The way I treated you when you were a cancer patient, I didn't understand." And I said, "Shelley, what's your diagnosis?" She said, "How'd you know?" I said, there's no other way you would know, because you were fabulous. There was no other way she would know. She's not here anymore. So, anybody ever ask the question, why me? Nah. Yes. Yeah? I think it's a hard question because it's a question that we can't really answer. And I think that, unfortunately, there's some literature out there that continues to be out there that says things that, you know, kind of like you can heal yourself if you admit that you caused it, and then
Stop eating sugar.
if you, it's those, stop this, do this one thing. And it's kind of like if they have the one thing, run as fast as you possibly can, because how could they? I have the opportunity to work with MOCA on some of the research that's happening down at Mayo on ovarian cancer. These people are brilliant. I can't even formulate a question listening to these people. They are phenomenal, the treatment that they are working on for us. For someone to say to me, there's really a cure for cancer and they're hiding it. I mean, we've all heard this stuff. Okay, so, but it's kind of that insidious thinking that makes us ask the question, why me? How come our families changed? Why are we going to Mayo for vacation as opposed to Arizona? We all ask these questions. So when I was diagnosed, remember, this was a really long time ago, so statistics were really different. And remember that I was working on 2 doctorates. So when I was diagnosed, I asked my doctor for his current research. And he gave me all his current research. And that was when I learned, because nobody would have ever told me this, that I had a 5% chance of living 24 months. Nobody survived. Okay? It's like, whoa. One of the gifts that I had, that in one of my doctoral programs, I was a TA to teach graduate level statistics. Just as an aside, I couldn't do that. Today, that's a part of the chemo that burned out my brain. I can't do statistics anymore, but I could then. And so I could read the research, and what I know from statistics is that they're constantly moving, and I had published enough research by that point that I knew at a minimum that data that he handed me that he had just received was at a minimum 3 years old. So they had no idea what was really going on, right? So what I thought was, and why me? Why not me living through this? In research talk, it's called N of 1. Whenever you look at a study, they have this little N, and then it has a number behind it, which means how many research participants were in that study. I said, I'm going to be a study of 1. Because what I understand is research changes. So when I went back to talk to my doctor, I said, why not me? Let's put a new data point out there. Somebody's got to break through. So part of what I do is when I have those fears and those questions, why not? Why me? Why me? Why me? I want to say, and why not me do this? Because somebody is living through this. Somebody's having a longer, healthier experience. Why not? Why not us? Here we are. If I don't even entertain the thought, it's hard to look for it. I had one other very powerful event. I spent a lot of time in the hospital. My treatment was so different. But I'm a pacer, you can see that. So I had my 2 IV poles, and I would walk like this down the hall. I wasn't very strong. And I can remember I would do my pacing at night, and I collected this 8-year-old that was walking with his pole. And of course, what I was doing in my head was feeling sorry for myself. Thinking, why me? Graduate school, right? My research was stolen. True, it's too bad. Why did I thought, I'm a good person. I missed a lot of good parties because I didn't smoke and drink. I commuted by bicycle, so I exercised. I was a vegetarian, All the things I said, stop eating meat. No, I'm going to start eating meat. I got cancer. I was a vegetarian, I bought a car, do something different. So, I'm feeling sorry for myself, struggling down, trying to figure out why is this happening to me. And then this 8-year-old, and he's talking about, he's got his bald head and he's got a ball cap on, and he's talking about how he wants to play on whatever game that his buddies are playing. And I'm like, wow, get out of myself here for a second. I'm 30 and this poor kid's 8, and I'm thinking, my life hasn't started yet. I'm not out of school, and this kid hasn't even got out of grade school. And so we're walking through the peds unit, we stop, because we both have to stop to breathe for a while. And I look up, and we're in front of this isolation room. And I see this new mom holding this infant that's hooked up to chemo. And I thought, how can I think that this is about me, that I did something, that why me, this is random. I knew for a fact that 8-year-old didn't do anything wrong. And I knew even more so that infant and that new mom didn't do anything wrong. And I tried to think about what did I do wrong, but there was nothing that I did wrong that would have made me have my diagnosis. And that's part of that depression of the past and where have I been, that I needed to forgive myself for even thinking that, so I could be present enough to say, what am I going to do today? Is I want to work on healing. Whatever that means, I'm going to work on healing. And when my mind tracks me back to what did I do wrong, it's like I was living a good life and I am a good person. I am doing the best that I can. All right? Thoughts? Answers? So I'm asking you, one of my strategies I've just told you about is to have a stance of non-judgment. That when you find yourself judging yourself or judging the situation, it's like peel that apart. Why? Why do you think that you're so special that you're the worst person in the world? I'm here to tell you you're not that special. You're just the same as all of us. And nobody stands out that much. Okay? I want to bring you back into balance and to really, really, really be gentle with yourself. That things happen in life. And the courage is on how do we respond. Am I going to be victimized by this? Or am I going to keep growing in healing? I don't know if any of you watch that Sunday morning show. That's on Sunday mornings. This past week, I see little snippets of it every once in a while. This past week, there was a really powerful clip that if you can look it up, it's on CBS. I don't really watch TV much, but so I don't have cable, so I don't know if you cable people. But there's a new memorial that's in Washington, D.C. for all vets throughout times. Some of you are nodding heads. that are wounded for life. And the interviews that they had with these people, they're saying, I am lucky to be alive, and my job is to do the very best that I can with the time that I have left. They, of course, were much more eloquent than I. But when I heard them, they're doing the same walk we're doing. That they touched their death, and they've watched other people they loved and cared about and watched them die. And they too wonder, why am I alive? Because we also wonder that question. How come I'm here? I don't know why I'm here. You don't know why you're here. And one goofy thing that all of us in this room know, we know that everybody out there is in the exact same place. They just don't know it because they didn't cross the line. We don't know why we're here. But because we know from touching death and coming back to life, it gives us the opportunity, what do I want to do until I do leave? Right? I'd encourage you to check that out, because that is a huge difference between saying, I wanted this experience, I think it's a yippee-skippy experience, and accepting it. Right? This is not an easy experience, yet if I accept it, then I can start moving with it and allow myself to have that whole emotional rainbow. Remember, I can touch them all and keep moving. Let's see. I've talked about this already. I have this concept that I call twisted gifts. That when a situation comes into life and it's exceedingly painful, like you have cancer, almost sounds like you have mail. But so it's very, very painful. If we work with it, and word I would use is do healing work, we can turn it over and twist it, and we can find gifts and opportunities that can come from here. I want to just name two. I come from a very good Minnesota family, and everything is fine. Swedish, Norwegian, kind of. You know? So imagine when everybody learned after my, I don't know how long, surgery, because I wasn't present for that. And they all heard stage 4 and were fighting for her life. Okay? First thing I did, because what they told me is you better prepare to die. It's like, okay, so I'm going to say goodbye to people. I'm going to clean up, do some things, right? Now remember, that wasn't exactly what I thought was good fun, but it was like, okay, the task at his hand. I didn't expect that I had cancer, and you're telling me I have cancer, and I got this scar that beats all scars. And I could bring my dad in here today, and we could recreate this. When I said to my dad, we're going to talk about my death. Now, here's the goofy thing. 2 days after my diagnosis, my dad's mom died. So my maternal grandmother, who had emphysema with her, the oxygen, and would smoke her cigarettes and cough because she just had a little cough, okay? So Grandma, I want you to know, died yelling at the Vikings. Had a heart attack. It's great. Okay, so good old Grandma. She was wonderful. Grandma Choo Choo. She worked for the railroad. So Grandma wouldn't talk about what was going on, right? So here's my dad binging between hospitals because she didn't die immediately. And I'm in the hospital. I want to talk about death, his daughter. And there's his mom, who's 82, has emphysema, and would never talk about dying, okay? So my dad, I said, we're going to talk about my death, and here's what I want, and here's what my dad got up, and he's pacing and pacing, So one of the twisted gifts is that we cleared the air. And I said, here's the deal. Grandma Chooch, she gets to do her death her way. She's not dying, she has a little cough. That's her deal. You get to do your death when it's your death, this one's mine. I'm talking. Remember, I'm a therapist. Well, now I am. I wasn't then, I was a researcher, but now I'm a therapist. We laughed, we cried. We hugged. And there is not a time since then that anybody in my family doesn't really hug and doesn't answer the phone and leave without saying, I love you. That's a way cool gift that came from having cancer. And when I think twisted gift, I want you to know I'm never forgetting how this came to be. And I'm not telling you, that was so fun. Spending a year in the hospital, you should all do it. I'm not saying that. I am honoring what's come from that. And one of the pieces that I am challenging you to think about with your twisted gift is that you are learning what you want and need, because that's what helps you heal. And especially us as women, we have all been in this culture really told not to think about what we need. We're very good at taking care of other people. And you need to take care of yourself when you're a cancer patient. And that's a gift to be able to say, what do I need? What do I want? Because you're role modeling for all of the females in your life that that's an okay thing to do, and it's a critically important thing to do. I'd call that a twisted gift because it's a rough ride, how we learn that. Okay, so here's another one. You know how people say to you, you're so lucky. You know, you are my role model. You should write a book, right? Or how about this side of it? Did I ever tell you about my Aunt Jane that I told you? And you can finish it. And she died, right? Right? Okay. And then you're going, oh my God, you know. So I call that Blurt's disease. Because what's going on is you're thinking, what are they thinking? Like my cousins. Remember my cousins? And then you realize they are not thinking. They're just blurting what comes out of their mouth. They may afterwards go, wow, how could I have said that too? But here's a psychological insight to what's going on. They see us, big C. It's not the little c, it's a big C, bold, underlined. And every one of their historical experiences and their fears around cancer comes spewing out. It's not about you. They're not thinking about you. Here's one of my all-time toppers. So when I was diagnosed, of course it went around the neighborhood, little Brenda has cancer, right? And so my childhood best friend, my parents talked to her parents and whatever. So you know how you get to college and you go separate ways. So I hadn't seen this woman since then. Well, so she called me up because she had heard that I had cancer, and so did we want to get together? And so I was like, okay, so let's get together. And when I had treatment, they didn't have any anti-nausea medication. So that was pretty ugly. So anyway, so I was pretty skinny because I couldn't really eat. And I couldn't walk so great. So my trick was I would wear layers of clothes because I was under 90 pounds. And so it was just my craziness because I would wear lots and lots of clothes because I would think that other people would think I was bigger. Anyway, and I really couldn't stand smells, but we were going to go to a restaurant and meet. So it was one of the days that I could walk. So we're there, and I'm walking. It was pretty bad. So I'm leaning in a booth, right? And she comes in, and she's dressed to the nines, which is cool, right? And I got layers of sweats on. And so we're talking, and she's eating, and I'm not. And she says to me, you must have done something really wrong for God to do this to you. So about 2 days later, I inhaled and went, oh, wow. Oh, my gosh, right? I can tell you that I have been ever so thankful to her over the years. Not that I've ever seen her again. Because why? But what she helped me understand psychologically, that whole piece, that she was blurting out what she was so afraid of. Because when we grew up, we were the exact same size. We swapped clothes. We spent so much time in each other's family. Nobody knew if she was in my family, I was in her family. And if it could happen to me, it could happen to her. And what we know is that cancer is random. There is no understanding why I have it and why you have it and those people over there don't. There's no, and so in a psychologically protective move is if I can make it be about you, then I'm still in that bubble of it can't happen to me. Okay? So I want you to understand what Blert's disease is, and she was so clear because I knew a little bit too much about her history, that if that couldn't have been it. That couldn't have been it, right? And so that helped me clarify it, is that it's not about me as a person being a bad person. And she couldn't take that in because it scares her. The other part is it's not our job to wake people up, to try and explain it. There's some people that are willing to listen, but we can't have them cross the line. Probably if somebody pushes me a lot and tells me that I'm so special, I'm not special. And I'm not lucky. I just happen to be Brenda, right? But if they keep pushing and they want to understand and it's so intriguing and you have such great insights, I just say, when you have your cancer diagnosis, we'll be happy to talk about it. Right? Like Shelley. That usually stops them. It's like back off. This wasn't here for fun. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about fear of recurrence. I want to give you some strategies about this whole piece. Here's some phrases I've heard from people. I'm waiting for the next shoe to drop. I don't really feel like I can be happy or get engaged in life because treatment stopped. Now I'm in a panic because I didn't realize that having treatment made me feel protected. Now, how goofy making is that? Okay? Because remember when we're here and they're having us start treatment and we were like, oh, and we all had people say to us, you're not going to let them give you that poison. Now, how helpful is that? Okay, it's like, come on. What are they thinking? They're not thinking. There's Blert's disease. So over here, we're like, how am I going to get into this rhythm? How am I going to take this in? How am I going to do chemo? How am I going to do radiation? I wasn't lucky enough to have radiation. Because it was so widespread, that wouldn't have worked for me. And then when you stop treatment, it's like all of a sudden I'm naked. And then you realize all the time you've been going into the clinic and you see these people and the nurses, they are amazing human beings. Aren't they? You just want to take them home. It's like, come on, you're so great. And now I don't see you anymore. And now you only want me to come in every 3 months. And at first, everybody's happy, right? And they say, good for you, we're so excited for you, and they pat you on the back, and you go out and you're smiling, and you get to your car, and you're like, oh! I meet half the people in my practice at that point, calling in a panic. They call Chris and say, oh my gosh, I'm falling apart. I should be happy. No expectations there. And everyone else thinks, well, your chemo finished yesterday, you're good today. here's what happens is we need some time to integrate what happened, okay? It's not until we get some distance that we can see things. Here's a little piece for you as support team. When we're in the treatment phase and we're going to treatment all the time and we're going through all those crazy tests, especially in the beginning, and we're all just running for our lives, right? Because we don't, it's just, they tell us, come here, and man, do they take our calendar and they fill it in. And we are talking the whole time, a lot. We're talking a lot. We probably are crying a lot. We're probably angry, we're frustrated, wondering how can this be? And then we finish treatment. And here's many times support people think, we're done. We've only just started. Because we've been busy running. And we can't know what happened to us until we have some distance. And if we are some of the people that they're saying this is lifelong treatment, which I think about is like insulin, right? That it's the same thing. My best friend that has diabetes, if he did not take insulin, he would not be here. He's on lifelong medication, right? There's a lot of examples. And so our oncology researchers have gotten so far that we can do that. I know one person has been 14 years she's been on chemo. She still works full time. She's just like, praise, that's so cool, all right? And so once we get into that glide place, we are now at a point where we can look at what happened to us. That's when we need to process again. And I'm telling you support people not to be surprised. It's not like there's something wrong with your person, your loved one. It's that we now can look at it. So let me give you an image. This is a Minnesota image. It's coming soon. You're driving along and you hit black ice, right? And so here's what happens is you go really slow. Everything slows down. There's a pole. That person's smiling. Oh, they're not smiling. That person has a hat, right? And you're like this. And everything's slow. And then you hit and it crashes. And then it slows down and you do a quick body check. And this whole time when you're in slow motion, you have no emotion. Because you're really watching what's going on. And once it's done, you shake down with emotion. And go, wow, all the things that just could have happened. And I could have hit that pole and it's racing. That's the same thing that happens to us, emotionally speaking, when we get to either the constant glide with here's the treatment now, or when they say you are now Ned, and we shake down again. Because what just happened? How did I get here? I've been running. There really wasn't time to integrate what's gone on. And so I want to validate for you why we want to talk about it again. And I would say to you, psychologically, we need to go through and retell the story a good 5 times without getting any input from anybody else. I don't even want to hear what you have to say. Your job is to go like this. Just go like this. Which is that hoped out continuum. So we are trusting one another that I can go here to my fears and say, I could have hit that pole. And because this is such a different experience, we watch people when we're in the room, right? That part was different for you than for me. I didn't sit in a chemo room. I was in a hospital room. But I've been in plenty of chemo rooms with people now. And it's different to watch people, and you can watch people change over time. And then it starts to have that experience there, and I could be, now I'm over here, and it's just right. And there's this whole experience about what's my experience, what was their experience, what could have happened, what did happen, what is happening. So I want you to take the time and allow yourself, because this happens like waves. Remember I said this is like grief, right? Because now if this is where we're in this kind of stage where we know where we've been, it's predictable, either we're NED or we're on ongoing treatment, we're starting to go here, we need to grieve this too. And how grief works, it's like a wave. So you're walking along a beach and you're on solid ground, and all of a sudden the wave comes and it just pulls you out. And the wave is a memory. It could be a memory from any one of these experiences. It could be, but I talked to a woman today who was just sobbing. She's like, but I was supposed to be able to go on vacation still. And she can't. She can't fly anymore. She can't get in an airplane. Her lymphedema is so bad that she cannot physically be on an airplane. Right? This is where she thought, I was supposed to retire, right? I was supposed to get rid of grad school. I did. It just wasn't exactly how I thought I'd finish grad school. I thought I would finish it. Right? And so the wave of grief can be physical memories. We all have body memories of what happened, right? So it pulls us back, and then part of it is to allow it to wash through so then we can come back and be on that ground and have a chance to look at it now with some perspective. Some people talk about, I've learned some things. I've had people put their hands around my throat saying, there's nothing to learn here. It's different for all of us. And what's same for all of us is that it's a ride for every one of us. And so to remember that when we connect with people, with one another, that we are side by side. The good parts about connecting with each other as cancer patients is that we can talk to each other and have those rapid conversations. The not so good parts is if we start trying to ride somebody else's wave. That, I want to be just like, don't ever want to be like me. You'll have to talk to my children about that. But when I was an active patient, I joined a support group. And Brenda, stage 4 ovarian cancer, everybody went. And then they gave me that look like she's going to be dead soon, right? I mean, and that's a weird thing to have people look at you and you know that they're thinking she's going to be dead soon. And for sure that's what they are thinking. And there were 2 other women with ovarian cancer in that group. One had stage 1 and one had stage 2. Okay? I watched everybody in my group die. Every single person die. The stage 2 person was really mad at me that I was still alive as she was dying. Like I was in charge of this. I don't know why I'm alive. I'm back to that. Do you know why you're alive? And so this is the piece about we walk next to each other and we honor each other's paths. Right? It's nice to hear your story. It's nice to know that this part of treatment works for you, and then that didn't work for you. This worked for me. This didn't. This does. Just like, how do we bring ourselves back into balance, emotionally speaking? What trips you up? Some people, it trips them up thinking about what their job is. I've got quite a few people I work with that can't do their careers anymore. Their chemo brain is too profound. They can't. Okay? I couldn't go back and do my research anymore. How do I deal with that grief? Some people, it's bigger for them in different areas. Other people are, I'm so happy that I don't have to do that anymore. I never really enjoyed it, and that's that part of listening to themselves. So we have different strategies that work for different ones of us. I want to tell you a little bit about fear and anxiety from the brain research, what we know about the brain. That, you know how we have, I'm going to talk very simply about it because I don't want to use the big words because who cares? Those people can remember those words. So we have two hemispheres, right? And so let's say that I'm worried about what's going to bring my cancer back. Okay, that's a valid worry. And so I start thinking about it. So before I start being worried, if I had one of those caps where they could see and watch how my brain's functioning, it's called a functional MRI, an fMRI, where they can watch what's going on. It's all kind of just all over the place. If I start worrying about, and let's say that my fear about what's going to happen to me, when am I going to be real diagnosed, or what about this bump on my brain? That's mine. I got the bumpiest head ever. It's always, is this a new brain met? Here we go. Okay, so what happens with them watching the function of my brain is gradually, not so gradually, all the other parts stop getting any electrical current to it. They're shutting off. And this is going, spiking out is how I think about this. Anything that substantiates, supports my fear. I got a lot of stories about people that I know with brain mets. I can, that's what it feels like. I got a headache. Boy, it's just, it's really, whatever. Okay, I can do that. This is the only place in my brain that is now lit up. What you would also see happening to me is that my breath is about this deep. I call it the puppy pant. Okay? All of the oxygen has left my brain, has left my core. My GI tract is shut down. All energy is going to my extremities, my arms and my legs. Because this is my fear response. This is what happens physiologically so that I can fight that tiger or I can run away from it. Problem is, there is no tiger there. It's in my head. So here's a bunch of strategies when we as caregivers, as friends, or for ourselves, when we start to realize we're spiking out. Okay? Back to, we've got two parts of the brain. I'm only getting any function over here. I want to get function over here to start bringing back other thoughts. Remember that we're cross-wired? Okay? We call this the butterfly hug. If I start tapping and I'm cross, right? I start sending signals to the other side of my brain, and this starts lighting up. And then what happens is, I start to slow my breath down. And all of a sudden I can think differently. The spike comes in, and I go, that logic brain comes back in that we were talking about. Because my fear had taken over. So here's one strategy. I'll show you the male strategy when they spike out. This isn't to be mean. Here, watch. Right? Okay? They are so smart. They don't even know it. They're being so smart. Is they watch, 1 foot, they start doing this. So here's the female strategy, and we don't even know it. I gotta go to the bathroom. It's perfect. Let's all go together. And what happens is it gives us a break from this, and other parts come in. Here's another one. Have a glass of water. Because you cannot puppy pant and drink at the same time. That also works for tantruming children. It's a great strategy for kids. Another strategy is, you know how, let me tell you something about the people that you work with, and the ones that get anxious and they're sitting with their legs crossed and they're tapping, they're doing this. You know what side they're locked in on. That's not helpful. Tap, I'm alternating my feet. Not this. Not this. This will just ramp me up. So what I'm trying to do is have my body help me calm down. Of course, using your breath is very helpful. To notice if it's here is to breathe deep. If any of you have done yoga and they talk about going all the way down and lowering your diaphragm and doing the 3 parts coming all the way up. What I have found for many people that when they're spiking out, they have no idea what their breath is doing. None. They're like, my heart's racing, I can't breathe, I'm starting to go into a panic attack. It's like, take a walk. Go get a glass of water. They're not going to remember any of that brain research at the time. It's like, have your body help you become calm again. I'd like to say a little bit about meditation, guided imagery, relaxation techniques with your breath, and prayer. Those are, in a lot of ways, all the exact same thing. Different words, kind of different entry points to get calm inside, right? It works. It works. If you were to be in my office and come and work with me, one of the first challenges that I would give to you is to bookend your day, 2 minutes a day, doing something that's calming. The brain research is profound on practicing that when we have an emotion that rises up, right? We go out of balance. The more we practice being calm, when there's nothing going on, we can get to that calm place faster and easier the more we practice it. Because it's like a muscle memory, right? So I don't have any preference for how people do this. 2 minutes is really either side. If you can start and end your day, if you're saying a prayer, YouTube. I like YouTube because it's free. And if you just search guided meditation, guided sleep meditation, guided anxiety release meditation, guided anxiety, okay? You will be amazed at how many come up. The thing that you have to do is they have all different amounts of times, that, you know, the length of them. It's about the voice. If you like, there's a bunch of them by The Honest Guys. Sometimes I like to listen to The Honest Guys, other times I don't. It's a British voice. Sometimes it's intriguing, sometimes I can't stand it. So try some different ones. It's free. If you have any kind of eye device or whatever, it'll turn itself off. If you can start your day and end your day by doing that just 2 minutes at a time. I have many people that have prayers that they like to do. That's wonderful. If there's a place that you have been in the past where you felt calm, at peace, in your mind, you can think of that place. Okay, so I want everybody to think of it right now. First, I want you to notice, what do you hear? Now I want you to notice, what do you see? How does your body feel? Is it being supported? Are you walking slowly? What do you taste? Have you just had a sip of cool, refreshing water? What are you touching? Are you touching the sand and feeling it just warm? Are you in the mountains? In a cool water stream? Now as you sink into that for just a second, letting the back of the chair support you, I want you to notice your breath and how it's calm. And it's easy. And in this moment, I want you to know that if it's a real place or imaginary place, but let's pretend it's a real place, that if I had had your brain wired up when you were there, and the parts of your brain that lit up, that when you go through and you imagine it, and you go through your 5 senses, the exact same part of your brain lights up. Your brain does not know if you're truly there or if you're remembering being there. That is a powerful skill to bring yourself back to balance. When I was an active cancer patient, I went into the hospital. I had a date with chemo on Friday night, and apparently I would come home sometime on Sunday or Monday. I don't know. I woke up on Wednesday, and then I couldn't walk for the next 11 days. Okay? So I would wake up. Prior to that, for many years, I was in the Boundary Waters and I would guide trips. And one of my funnest things was picking up a lightweight aluminum canoe, which was 85 pounds, which was a very large portion of my weight. And having these big burly guys not be able to pick up a canoe, and I'd go, oh, you mean like this? Right? Okay, so now I'm flat. Now I can't move. I went to the Boundary Waters. That's where I went. I paddled. And part of the image that I used was like being on a river. It's not knowing what's around the river bend. Not knowing what's coming. And that can be healing. That I could get up and walk again. That I could get up and carry a canoe again. Only Kevlar, to be honest. They're like 30 pounds now. But that allowed myself, because that's some of the most peaceful place I had ever been, is in the Boundary Waters. And I felt strong and alive there, and let that come in. So I had a place to rest and bring myself back into balance as I kept dealing with, you're going to die, because they did tell me that on numerous occasions. I don't think they say that as directly anymore. I have a mantra that I use when I get afraid. It's kind of my daily mantra. And it is this: I am alive. I am well. I am healing until further notice. Right? We all understand until further notice. Nobody else gets that. They haven't crossed the line. But I have to do that because I know that my death exists. And I can't go into denial about it because it brings me back to life. I have a question. I'm almost having a hard time saying this out loud for these people over here because it's 8 o'clock. And we were going to be done at 8 o'clock, but we started a little late. Could we go like 10 more minutes? Would that be all right? Thank you for coming. We wish you the very best. I do want to talk a little bit about this piece, death. What I found to be true is people think if you talk about death that you can call death in. So we have this, in our culture, this kind of spooky thing that don't talk about it because then you're asking for it. And for me personally, there were times when I was in so much physical pain, I wanted to die. That would have been easier. And I asked to die. Didn't work. Didn't work. And I also found that the fear of death was huge, right? Partly because I was young, but it's something that our dominant culture that we live in doesn't allow us to talk about it very much. And so I found for myself, and now with the many, I've had the opportunity to work with thousands of people. I found that if anyone, myself, I'll just talk about it in terms of myself so it's easier to use I language, so that's all about me. But if I could look at my death and ask the question, what do I need to finish before I die? And take it seriously and complete that list of things. And what happens is, then all of my energy can be expended back on living. And when the fear of death comes up again, well, what about? Then I can ask myself, well, is there something that I wanted to add to this list? Now, I want to differentiate when people talk about their bucket list, and what I'm talking about is your list to complete. Bucket list is about living. These are the things I want to do when I'm living. That movie, I finally watched it after a whole bunch of years, which was kind of funny with, we got to jump out of airplanes and stuff. I want you to know I've helped lots of people walk consciously and with great beauty to their death. And there has not been one that said they would want to jump out of an airplane. The list is about things that I want to be conscious about what happens with my stuff. Who do I want to say goodbye to? What things do I want to clean up? What legal things do I want to do so people don't have a mess? I've asked this question of many people. I've had groups that I've done this with. And nobody's list is very long. Usually it's 4 or 5 things. And then what happens is all of your energy gets to be here in living and healing. And so then it's like, well, what if I die? Well, yeah, what if I die? When I get closer to it, and it's right here, and I'm right next to it, well, then I'll deal with that. But right now, I didn't wake up dead, and death isn't right in front of me. I'm doing treatment. I'm not doing treatment. I'm still Ned. So I'm alive, I'm well, I'm healing, until further notice, and further notice hasn't come. And I can ask myself the question, is there something else that I want to do? So at my house, I have a manila envelope. Because what I'm known for is things like, take a picture of me. Why we need to take a picture? Just you, no family picture. You always need to have a good picture of me for my obituary, because you just never know. Okay, so that's one thing. And then there's songs. It's like, oh, I'd like that song at my funeral. So I've learned to put scraps of piece of paper, and I now date them. What the song is, there's this great song in Lion King that I cry every time. It's like, well, that'd be good. Everybody gets to listen to Lion King. Okay, there's some other fun ones. So then this envelope of things that I think about, because it's like, if it comes up and it's about my death, I have a place to put it. On the outside of that envelope, it says, when I die, look in here. And of course, behind there's my will and the other stuff. Where to find that stuff? But that takes it off the plate, because now I'm back to living 100%. Does that make sense when I say it that way? Did I say that's an easy thing to look at? I didn't. I want you to know it's easier than you think it is. Fear, you said this at the start, fear blocks our view. And so it's like, well, what's one thing? Start with one thing. Start with one thing. I've had people say to me, these are scrapbooking people. I'm not a scrapbooker, but I need to do one for every year of my kid's life. It's like, oh boy, that's life. That's not this list, right? So enjoy doing those things, because that's life, right? That's different. I have a couple of things I wanted just to say to you as supporters. And I'm imagining that many of you that also wear the hat as cancer patient have also been supporters and are supporters, because we all play multiple roles. I want to apologize for people not asking how you are, because as a supporter, you do phenomenal things. And when we can't hold our own life, and when we're so afraid, and you're here and you have hope for us, you hold us. And I want to say thank you for that. I want to give you permission not to have to be a cheerleader, especially when we're over here. I want to remind you with the Hope Doubt Continuum, just holding us and letting us talk through our fears will bring us back to today, because they are about the future and we are not there. And if you can hear us talk about them, that means we can release them. So I want to thank you for that. I want to honor how hard it is to watch somebody you love dearly go through such hard things. For those of us that are cancer patients and watch our friends that we've gotten to know with cancer struggling, it's hard because we aren't in control and we can't do anything except say, I love you and I care about you. And I put you on my prayer chain. And that's true for you as caregivers too. You need to take care of yourself. Partly because we're counting on you. But every caregiver group that I have led over the years, my homework to you is that every day for at least 5 minutes, you do something that you can name as for you and only you, so that you can refill your cup. That's true for all of us, but especially as a caregiver. You are really important. I want to say one last thing, that those of us as cancer patients, I don't want you to listen to this because it's not for you. I want to validate that we as cancer patients have what I call public and private behavior. Okay, so I'm just going to show you what that's like. Here's public. I'm great. It's good. Would you like some tea? Here. The door closes. Here's private behavior. Oh, I gotta go lay back down. Right? And that's true for all of us, because it takes a lot of energy to go out in public and hold ourselves up. And especially when we're in treatment and we are recovering from treatment, we cannot hold that up all the time. And we love you dearly, and we trust you the very, very most, that you'll be there when we're showing you our roughest side. So thank you for letting us show you that when we can't hold it together all the time, and we stay in our pajamas for a day or 5. Right? Anybody disagree? Thank you. My summary statement. What I've asked you to do is to heal and grow from a situation you never asked for. I asked you to think of strategies when you are out of balance emotionally to bring yourself back in and to be centered again, and to be very gentle with yourself. I want to remind you that there's not one thing special about me. And if I can pull it off for 26 years, so can you. Right? We can do this together, supporting each other. And I want to thank you for your time tonight, for taking care of yourself and each other, and keep healing. Thank you.